Hi, welcome once again to Senior Focus. I'm your host, Bill Adams. Senior Focus is a show designed for adults over the age of about 50 or so, but if you're younger than that, feel free to stay tuned because, especially if you're a voter in Mahoning County, we have a senior levy coming up, and we're going to be talking about the senior levy that's actually in place in Trumbull County. Before we get started, though, I wanted to say thanks to Greg Roten from Armstrong's Channel 20 and 100, and Keith Kaiser from the Mill Creek Metro Parks, who allows us to use the Davis Visitor Center. Again, also, if you want to learn more about the topic or about Senior Focus, we're on Facebook, and you can go to Senior Focus TV on Facebook, or watch Armstrong On Demand for shows that are archived. We're also on YouTube. Today we're going to have as a guest Diane Siskowic-Jurkovic.
Very good.
I got the name right. And she is the Senior Levy Administrator. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And again, Senior Levy Administrator up in Trumbull County. Before we get started, why don't we just talk about where you're located and if people want to contact you, if we had questions.
Okay. Very good. We are located on Youngstown Road, right next to the Board of Elections in the same building. Our phone number is 330-675-7846. You may call me there. Or the Area Agency on Aging, which is a regional agency, also is aware of the Trumbull County Senior Levy programs, so you can call them at 330-505-2300.
You also have a good website. I got a lot of nice information from the website. And
what is that website address?
It says here seniorlevyservice.co.trumbull.oh.us. The easy way is just go to Google, put in Trumbull County Senior Levy. That's what I do.
Very good.
So
very good.
But as part of that, again, we have a levy coming up in Mahoning County in March. Mm-hmm. And could you talk a little bit about the history in Trumbull County? When did it get started? How did this evolve?
The Trumbull County Senior Levy initially passed in 2005, and the renewal passed in 2010. And again, here recently, we had an almost 80% acceptance for the levy to pass in 2015 in the November election. Our levy is a 0.75 5 mil, that's 5 mil levy. I'm sorry, 0.75 mil 5-year levy that hopefully is renewed again in 5 more years. Don't know if the rate will stay the same, but at this point we haven't discussed that.
Mm-hmm. But it was just renewed recently.
It was just renewed at an almost 80% acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And that it brings in about how much money per year?
It brings in $2.3 million. When it first started, the property devaluation had not occurred, so we started with the first 2 years at $2.5 million. Mm-hmm. And we have had a $250,000 basically reduction over the last, since maybe about 2010 was the devaluation that occurred. Mm-hmm. So we have been working with $250,000 less, but we have maintained the same services we've had in the past.
And could you explain, what's the need for a local levy? People might say, again, doesn't the federal government and the state government provide some of these services or a lot of these services?
Well, with state government, as we all know, in the education arena, they've made cuts to balance their budget, and they've also made cuts to the local governments. Mm-hmm. As far as the funding that they're receiving. So less and less money is coming from the states. I do know with the passport program that the state does fund, their reimbursement rate is really difficult because it's so low and not keeping up with the times, and these providers that have these passport dollars have a hard time servicing the population with that funding. So additional money is needed to assist these agencies to be able to provide senior services. The other bigger issue is Ohio's aging population is growing.
Right.
We have a higher senior population and expecting to grow because our young are not staying in Ohio. Mm-hmm. They're leaving, which means that they're leaving their parents to fend for themselves instead of staying in the area to take care of their parents.
Right.
So it's a growing problem.
Right. So there are so many people out there living either by themselves as a widow or widower or as a couple, but again, maybe in their 80s, 90s.
Without the children.
Right. With the levy, you have what's called an advisory council. And could you describe, the workings of how does that work, and who's on the advisory council?
Well, back when this levy was first being planned, the commissioners wanted to assure that there was transparency in government.
Okay.
They didn't want to. They wanted the public to assist in how this money was going to be spent. So they had the intuition to have a volunteer advisory council board made up of 11 members that are members from throughout Trumbull County, not just within the larger urban areas, but in the rural areas also. It's made up of volunteers who meet once a month to decide how to allocate the monies, where the money should go, and what providing service areas. They deal with any issues that come along throughout the year, and it's all volunteer. So it's a nice deal. We have 11 members, and like I said, they're from all throughout the county. They're retirees, there's professionals, there's business people. It's just made up of anybody who is interested in being on that council.
And we were talking a little before the show, and you were saying that now is actually a busier time beyond just the once a month because I guess the bids come in, or you want to describe maybe that process?
We have a bid process that we advertise that the RFPs or the grant requests are available for pickup. The providers or interested parties, businesses pick up these packages and they submit their bids. They have about a month and a half to write their grants, fill out the paperwork, and submit it within, I think it's April that we have our submission date, and our 11-member council then reviews all those bids and then decides who is awarded what dollars based on the bid applications. So it's a very busy time of year that starts here in February when the bids go out for, when the paperwork goes out for bidding.
Do you have a competition in the bids, do you find, in some of these areas?
We do.
Yeah.
The biggest competition we have is with our senior centers, which is, we have roughly, I think it's 9 senior centers throughout the county. And every year there's more and more interest with other senior centers wanting to start up for their particular communities.
Oh, I see, okay.
This last year we had St. Joe's at the Mall had bid, and there's just not enough dollars to award everything that's asked for. So we have to decide who gets what. It's a difficult job.
Well, speaking of that, I know in the information that you sent, there was a division of how the money is spent by category. And I think the senior centers, which you just mentioned, got about a quarter of the money. How is that division made, as to which
category
because there's so many
amount.
needs, yeah.
Yes, it is difficult. Luckily, in 2005, when they started this levy, there was a lot of research done by Area Agency on Aging and a lot of meetings to try to decide where is the greatest need. So they kind of set the boundaries at the beginning. And since then, we've had some maneuvering of money from one category to another based on the demand and the need. Our greatest demand right now seems to be in the homemaker care, where we have waiting lists. So to try to decide how to fund that, to add more money to the homemaker care, now we have to take money from another area to try to, meet that demand.
Right.
So it's very difficult to try to figure out the allocation.
When you mentioned waiting lists, that brought up a question. Again, if someone's watching here in Mahoning County, but they have relatives in Trumbull or friends that they know might benefit from the senior levy, where do people call if they're looking for services?
Well, the overall agency is Area Agency on Aging.
Okay.
They are aware of several different funding sources. So not only are they aware of Trumbull Senior Levy, but they also have the Passport program and the Title 20 programs, which is basically through the Job and Family Services. So that's probably the best place to call. They will send out a social worker who will then evaluate and decide what's needed, and then they will find the funding source that best fits that person's situation.
Okay.
They can either call Area Agency on Aging, or they can call my office, and then I can direct them also.
And if you don't mind, we could talk maybe about some of the specific services. I know there's there's a wide range. We talked a little bit about senior centers, and we can go into that a little bit too. But you have I'm just going down a list that's on the website. But adult daycare. Would you describe what that is and how that works?
Adult daycare, the agencies provide a transportation to their daycare. They actually pick up the person. I'm not sure exactly what time they do that, but they transport them to the daycare. They provide lunch and just activities at the daycare, and then at the end of the day, I think about 3:30, they take them back home. So there is transportation provided to the daycares.
So
We
this
have
is, I was going to say, this is
two.
designed basically, again, to keep people from having to leave their home to go to a nursing home or assisted living.
And they need the daily contact. They need the to be watched.
Right.
Maybe because of Alzheimer's type situations.
But otherwise, when they're not in the daycare, the family, I imagine, takes care.
Correct. It's probably adults that are working, taking care of their parents. They have to go to work, so they send their parents to daycare.
And again, before we started the show, we were talking about actually the daycares are in Mahoning County, right?
Right. The interest from Trumbull County, we just have not had any bidders come through that are directly in Trumbull County. The two daycares that we're currently using, the one is in North Jackson, which is Antonine Sisters, and that is close to the border for Trumbull County, towards Newton Falls area. And the other agency is Easter Seals, and they're located in Boardman. So it's a little bit of a long bus ride for the seniors to get to the daycare. Now, the families can drive them to the daycare also. They don't have to use the transportation, but it is available to them.
And the next one that's listed is Chore Services. Would you describe a little bit about what that is?
Chore Services is basically anything outside your home. Lawn care, snow removal. Now, they won't remove the snow off your roof or rattle the bushes. They will remove snow enough to allow the car to get out of the driveway and sometimes the sidewalks. And they also do grass cutting and leaf care. Now, the problem with that is when it snows, everybody wants the service that day.
Sure.
And there's only one agency that does that service. So you've got, a small crew that goes out and does the snow removal. Within Trumbull County, I know our sheriff's department will go out and shovel snow too. So we have that, not through senior levy, but within the city district.
Right.
That they have that.
Do you also have home repair as part of?
Chore can be home repair if there's enough funding left over to do that, because the grass cutting season, again, just like the snow removal with the grass in the April and May when the grass is growing fast, people want their grass cut now. The nice thing about the chore service is it also lets the public know that that home is lived in.
Sure.
If you've got high grass, the possibility for burglary and thievery, could exist with. So the chore service keeps the grass cut and the house looking lived in. So
The next on the list is home delivered meals.
yes, we have the hot meal program.
Okay.
They aren't cold, they are hot meals. Once a day, 1 meal per day, delivered to your door. Now with that, you need, typically the recipient is homebound and isn't able to cook for themselves or have any family members that can cook for them.
Okay.
That's the criteria to be receiving the home delivered meals.
Is there a waiting list on that, or are you able to keep up?
There is a waiting list with that. I'm not sure how large that is. It's not as much as the Homemaker Care
But again,
waiting list.
because you have the local levy, if you didn't have the local levy, the waiting list would be much longer,
Right,
obviously.
right.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the agencies would survive without that.
Right. Do you also have congregate meals where people would come to a local, center or
We do,
something?
but that's not funded through senior levy.
Okay.
It's another funding source that Area Agency on Aging funds that. We've got several sites throughout the county. I believe there's 9 that I know of that one agency does.
Right.
I'm not sure of other sites that are out there, but
Okay.
I do know of those 9.
And one of the larger categories, I guess, is the personal care homemaker, which you were talking about.
Right, that's the actual inside the home. Homemaker is anything to do to keep the home safe. Dishes cleaned, laundry, bedding, sweeping the floors, and we try to limit the number of hours that the providers can go into the home because we're trying to touch as many people as we can. That's one of the lessons that we've kind of learned over the years in doing this to try to alleviate that waiting list.
Right.
We don't want a homemaker going in and spending all day
With
on a
one
large
person.
home.
Yeah.
What we're just trying to do is the basic living area to keep that safe for the senior. The personal care is body, bathing, hygiene, that kind of thing.
And so visiting nurse type situation, that would be something through the Agency on Aging. That's not something through a levy. The levy.
Visiting nurse, we do have to have a nurse on staff with the homemaker agencies because they have to initially evaluate what is needed. So we do have that staff person that goes out once every few months to check in on the person and make sure everything is good and that they don't need any additional care beyond the homemaker personal care.
Sure. Yeah, that's understandable. The next one on the list is prescription assistance,
Well,
which I didn't know you had.
we
but-
used to have that.
Okay.
I think that, do they still show that as part of our, that might
Yeah.
be online
Okay.
that needs corrected. We used to have that program. They do that at our senior centers, but it's
Okay.
not funded through us. It is funded through us, but not direct.
Sure,
It's one of
it's
the
as-
services they offer that we
as
fund
part of the senior
centers.
center.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I know also, just from personal experience, I think Humility of Mary, the local hospitals, which would include St. Joseph up in Trumbull, and
Okay.
St. E's has that
Okay,
program also.
very good.
Protective Services, could you talk about that?
That is more in the legal arena. What happens if family members are abusing the seniors, either financially or physically? We have ward situations where someone is sent in and removes all of that abuse that possibly happens and then keeps continual oversight on that individual. Usually the courts get involved and have to assign payees or assign someone to a family member to oversee this person. So that's where you get into more of the abuse situations that we have.
Yeah, we just had a show with Trumbull, Mahoning County Adult Protective Services. And of course, they do that service here locally.
Right. The Job and Family Services is your initial contact with the protective service. So if you ever believe that a neighbor is being abused by a family member, whether it's, like I said, physical or financial, then contact the Job and Family Service to let them know. We also have an interesting unit that Trumbull County has created. It's called our Senior Services Unit.
Okay.
And right now that is the employee that operates that was an ex-deputy, sheriff's deputy, so he's very aware of the systems out there as far as, the protective services. So he's kind of like the watchdog. He goes out, he hears about a case, checks it out, and then he further, evaluates and sends that person to the right direction.
There's also the group, is it Tappan?
Yes.
And do you fund that
We
actually?
do fund Tappan. That is, what is the name of
The
their
Trumbull Advocacy and Protection
Protective Network?
Or Protective
And
Network.
it's a network agency where not anybody, these providing service companies get together once a month, once a quarter, and they compare notes and they network and look at specific cases and then try to determine what's the best action to go through for that case. Or maybe they talk about just agency wide kind of issues that they try to resolve. So it's kind of a networking, coordinating of efforts so that nobody's stepping on each other's toes. And
Yeah, I'm not sure that Mahoning County has that. There may be something informal, but it certainly would be a good idea. I've done a little research on elder abuse nationwide, and I know a lot. That's sort of interdisciplinary teams and networks working on that is sort of the way to go.
It's a new concept, and Trumbull County was one of the premier. They started this in Columbus. The state was interested in what they were doing here in Trumbull County. So it's a very unique concept.
And again, just from my own experience, I know a leader in this for a long time was Judge Swift.
Right.
I used to work for him many moons ago, but he was very active.
Very active with the senior population. Yes, he was, and he did a lot with the protective service type. He created some senior court programs, and I know there's a new program coming up within the senior courts, and off the tip of my tongue, I can't remember exactly what they were doing. But the senior court it's a court system that it's not funded through us, but Judge Swift started this. And instead of sending a senior who maybe has done something that typically would go through the courts, even if it's just driving experience type related, this senior court would step in, and they wouldn't go through the typical court process and get charged and fined and the embarrassment of that. They would go to senior court, and senior court would actually arrange for driving, not driving lessons, but just a refresher course type thing to assist them so that they don't get into that situation again. Or to even evaluate if, driving is maybe risky for that person.
Right, maybe consider stopping driving.
Right.
And again, just to go back, you do fund a series of senior centers, and that's kind of unique, well, not unique to Ohio, but unique to this area. Mahoning County, we have Austintown and Park Vista, 2 or 3, but you have several throughout the area.
And we try to range our senior centers so that they are countywide and not just all in the larger areas. But when you get out into the rural areas, the travel distance to the centers, they don't see as many people as the urban areas do. But our senior centers are very important because we want to keep our seniors active and mobile. Because if they're not active and mobile, they're not socializing, they become isolated, depression, you're not as mobile, so therefore you're sitting more. Then you might need help in the home. So you could see how they all are correlated.
Right.
Keeping them active, then they don't have the demand on the homemaker care, and you don't have the demand on the home-delivered meal, adult daycare. So we try to keep our seniors in Trumbull County as active as we can. And the senior centers are those programs that do that.
And I had actually skipped over one of the services. I don't think we talked about transportation. How does that work?
That was initially the focus for the levy. Was the big part of it was the transportation need. And we have a transportation provider that allows for $2 trips anywhere in the county.
Okay.
You can go from the far reaches of the corner of the county,
Kinsman,
and it would only cost $2. Yeah, Kinsman
Wow.
to Newton Falls would be a $2 one-way trip. Now, if you are, they call them the communities that the townships or the cities help fund the transportation. If you're living in one of those communities, then your trip is only $1.50.
Oh.
Per
That's
ride.
even
So
better.
those are the like Warren, Niles, Gerard. Trying to think of the others. There's a few. Liberty might be one of them, but there's a few, maybe 6 participating communities that you can get a $1.50 ride. Now it could be for medical, it could be for shopping trips, it could be for going to the beautician for the day, it could be going to a friend's house. So the transportation is not just strictly medical. We have several providers of transportation for that. One of them will take you outside the county for medical trips only,
Okay.
but within a 30-mile radius, which actually takes someone to Poland from Trumbull County. So we can provide those medical trips.
And again, we're talking with Diane Siskowic, Jurkovic, pronounce it right. She is the senior levy administrator for Trumbull County, and we're hoping that you get an idea of what it's like in Trumbull County and the use of the senior levy, because again, Mahoning County has its own levy on the ballot in March. So this gives you a little idea of what a levy does in a particular county. Again, the funding is about, what, $2.3 million now? $2.3 million. And if this is accurate, you have a little pie chart, which I found interesting, as to where the money is used. About a third is for in-home services. We've talked about Homemaker and...
Homemaker, Chore, personal care, adult daycare is in that Homemaker, and the home-delivered meals.
And then the senior centers, which we were talking about, are about a quarter or 25%. For all of that. Again, we also talked about how there are other services like prescription assistance that can be found sometimes at the senior centers. Transportation, which we just mentioned, is about 20%. Protective services, which we were talking about as adult protective services, or making sure people aren't being neglected or abused, that's about 11%. And daycare, adult daycare, which we started with, was about 4%. And administrative costs, which I imagine is you and the council.
The office.
The office. And again, why don't we mention where the office is located?
The office is located next to the Trumbull County Board of Elections on Youngstown Road. I am the administrator at that office, directly reportable to the county commissioners for Trumbull County.
And they make the ultimate decision.
But
generally
follow. Because they wanted to create transparency in government, so they created this council, and the council makes recommendation to the commissioners, and the commissioners accept that recommendation. And I am not aware of any one time that the commissioners have not accepted the recommendations of the council. So it's been a very nice working relationship.
Okay. And one other thing that was very interesting in the information that you sent before the show, about the levies around the state of Ohio and the counties that have levies and the ones that don't. And the vast majority in Ohio do have
very
senior
interesting.
levy.
I was not aware that our map, that the senior levies were throughout the state that way.
Yeah, it's over 70 of the 88 counties.
Correct.
And in Mahoning County, there is, I know of one, because I started the Austintown Senior Center, there is a senior levy for Austintown. But otherwise, up to this point, there's been none. Trumbull County, again, just the history goes back to 2005.
2005, 2010 renewal, and 2015 renewal. So it's been a very successful program.
And the last vote on that was, what was it?
Almost 80%.
80%. Wow. Well, thank you very much, Diane. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
And hopefully you have a better understanding of how a senior levy works up in Trumbull County. My name is Bill Adams. You've been watching Senior Focus. We appear a couple times each month on Armstrong Channel 20 and 100. Thanks to Greg Roden for bringing the show to you, and also thanks to Keith Kaiser from Mill Creek Metro Parks. He allows us to use the beautiful Davis Visitor Center. If you're ever in the area, please stop by the Davis Center or any place in Mill Creek Metro Parks. And until next time, thank you for watching.